All right, 7:07 on the Grandy Group. As you probably know by now, Brian Neiman off today, spending time with his significant other. Speaking of significant others, Major Garrett is here. I want to emphasize we are just friends.
Just friends.
And colleagues. And we welcome
Not even significant friends.
Not even significant friends. But we welcome a significant friend and colleague to the Grandy Group now, who you know is Joe DiGenova, our legal counsel, former U.S. attorney, and will be joining us as one of our panelists at our Domestic Terrorism Center seminar this Thursday at the Capitol Visitor Center. Joe, good morning.
Good morning, Fred, and good morning there, Mr. Garrett.
Good morning, Joe. It's great to have you with us.
Joe, I got to ask you, as you watch these events unfold in Egypt, and we know this morning the military has taken control. They have suspended the Constitution, which in Egypt's case, I guess, is a good thing, dissolved Parliament, and promised free elections. But underneath all of that, as you look at this, aren't there a lot of legal institutions that have to be looked at and perhaps reformed before they can get to what we would call a democracy?
Absolutely. In fact, there are going to be some institutions that are going to have to be created, like opposition parties, political laws governing the conduct of elections. The military is doing exactly what it needs to do, which is establish a stable environment, law and order, if you will, during the interim period while a new constitution is written, while laws are passed, while an interim parliament is set up. They're going to do this by fiat, but it appears that the military is actually acting in the best interest of the people of Egypt, and that's all to the good, but there's a lot of work to do, and that's why we have a couple of things in this country, as you're well aware of, Fred. Both the Republican and Democratic parties have international institutes that they send people overseas.
The National Endowment for Democracy.
Create Republican democracies, and I used a small R for that. They've done that in Eastern Europe with remarkable success. Egypt is going to be the great test of the efficacy of those organizations.
And, Joe, are we kidding ourselves in the West when we think, well, these elections should happen right away? Perhaps they should be delayed, if not delayed, at least extended until the point where, A, you have some legal foundations underneath it, political parties that are both representative and respectful of each other. I mean, these things take time. They don't lend themselves to add water instant democracy, do they?
Well, I think there's no question about that. That's absolutely correct, Major. And in fact, the Egyptian people seem to appreciate that. I must say the interviews of the people in Tahrir Square were really encouraging and fascinating. They are prepared. They got what they wanted, Mubarak out. Now the military is running the country. That's going to provide some time to do the necessary institution building. Because if you have an election now, the only organized group is the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yeah, that was
they've been organized for years. So we know that that's not going to happen. The military has made it very clear that there is not going to be an election until they believe the country is ready. So I think whatever Americans want or don't want, and who knows what this administration wants, they've been saying different things from day one. Bottom line is the Egyptians don't care about the United States at this point insofar as that. The military cares about the money it gets from the U.S., but I really believe the military cares about much more than that, and I think they care about the future of Egypt.
But talking about that and talking about what may be a constitutional convention and reworking their laws and court system, if you were the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, wouldn't you be vying for a place at the table, if for no other reason to at least begin to infiltrate Sharia law into the constitutional reforms of the country?
Absolutely. I mean, if they're going to have a true reform movement, that's just going to have to be accepted by people. I mean, the fact is the Muslim Brotherhood exists there, and even though now it is an outlawed organization in one sense, in that, like all other political organizations, it cannot participate in the process, those days are over. And I just can't believe that the military is going to, as a matter of law, exclude them from participation in the process. So it does mean that the secular parts of Egyptian society are going to have to really be on their game. And if they're not, then we'll see what happens. It could get ugly, but it could also be magnificent.
Joe, picking up on your last word there, magnificent, are you net optimistic, net pessimistic, or net I just don't know enough about where this is going?
Oh, I'm net optimistic, and the reason for that is you have a highly educated, very youthful group of people in Egypt. Like many in the Middle East, the overwhelming majority of their populations are under 30. These people know the Internet. They know the social networking. They communicate with people all over the world. These are not insular, isolated people any longer. Mubarak found that out. These folks communicate with people all over the world. They have a sense of democracy and freedom and pluralism that never existed in the Middle East prior to the Internet. I mean, the Internet has been an amazing weapon against totalitarianism. By the way, it does show how incredible what Ronald Reagan and the Pope and a few other people did, Margaret Thatcher, in Eastern Europe when the Internet was basically, just being born.
And do you think, Joe, based on that optimistic assessment, that this, if not in a real way, settles the question about Sharia and the Muslim Brotherhood and Egypt's future, but will over time settle it, that these instincts toward communication, interaction, pluralism, and youthful embrace of Western concepts, though in an Egyptian setting, will over time direct Egypt's future?
I do, and I think the thing that Sharia, I think, will not be able to take in the Western world and even in the Middle Eastern world is exposure. The incantations about which Fred was reading earlier from the list of Sharia law no-nos,
yes. Mm-hmm.
That cannot survive on the Internet with the pluralism that exists on the Internet. I mean, that just is impossible. What you're going to see, though, is there is going to be a huge fight in Egypt. The Muslim Brotherhood is going to want Sharia to be actually part of the Constitution and to move that country toward a religious base. It's going to be up to the people of Egypt to decide it. My guess is they're not going to permit that. There may be some parts of Sharia law included, but there'll be more, not the kind of stuff that's going to make people cringe. We shall see. But all bets are off right now. I'm betting on the Egyptian people.
Well, I hope you're right. I will just pick up on something that Major said that occurred to me as you were talking about this. The Islamic terrorist organizations, principally Al-Qaeda of the Arabian Peninsula, not exactly dummies when it comes to the Internet. I mean, that's where Anwar al-Awlaki is getting most of his recruits these days.
That's right.
And I would assume he's going to be broadcasting or at least streaming into Egypt if he isn't already.
Absolutely, and that's why it is so important during this interim period that these various institutions that they're creating really take shape as quickly as possible. But I got the sense from the people in Egypt, and particularly the people in the square, that there is a desire. There's more of a desire for a secular society than for a religious society. But we shall see, Fred. I mean, we all have fears. I'm obviously trying to be a little bit more optimistic.
Mm-hmm. Joe, I want to switch gears for a moment because in addition to keeping a close eye on the federal deficit and debt situation, I also keep a very close eye on what's happening at the state level.
Disasters.
Yes, enormous budgetary problems that have to be remedied on a real-time basis within the calendar year because most state constitutions require that. There's been talk about some states coming to the federal government saying, can you bail us out? And Eric Cantor, John Boehner, and others in the Republican leadership in the House have said, don't come here. We are not going to elevate moral hazard to state budgets. We're simply not going to bail you out, solve your problems yourselves. Question, legally, is it permissible? Is there any legal remedy being found in states declaring bankruptcy and using that power to renegotiate their pension obligations with state employees?
Well, certainly a bankruptcy by a state would allow it to renegotiate its pension liabilities with all unions. Under federal law, states do not have that right. The bankruptcy code only deals with municipalities. And, of course, we've had many, many municipalities declare bankruptcy over the last 50 years. The bottom line for the states is they can do whatever they want to do. The reason they're not mentioned in the bankruptcy code is that Congress has always felt that it would be a violation of the 10th Amendment to try to tell the states what they had to do. That thinking is changing, by the way, right now. A lot of legal thinkers believe that Congress could include states in the bankruptcy code, but states have a right to do whatever they want to do anyway. They can pass local laws allowing them to vitiate collective bargaining agreements. They don't need the federal government to do that. They can do that in their state legislatures. So waiting for the